You are listening to the Choose Your Struggle podcast, a member of the Shameless Podcast Network. This week on the Choose Your Struggle podcast, it's recovery advocate and coach Tim Harrington. But first, Kid Mental, let's go.
Things ain't always gonna go our way, but you can always win when you choose your struggle. And some battles will be yesterday, but today is for a new beginning. Choose your struggle, and don't worry about what they say, but you can always win when you choose your struggle. And you can bounce back just as Jay. Come on and listen to Choose Your Struggle. Whoa, choose your struggles. Choose your struggle. Whoa, choose your struggle.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Choose Your Struggle podcast. This is episode 101. Thank you so much to everyone who reached out with love and congratulations about the 100th episode. It was really nice to hear from all of you. I had a bunch of meetings and a couple of interviews for this show on Monday. I'd completely sort of forgotten to block out that day on my calendar. And, you know, part of that, I guess, was thinking, there won't be that much work to do around the 100th episode. But there was a lot. There was a lot of people reaching out, wanting to chat, a couple of interview requests about specifically the 100th. And it was very nice, and I appreciate it. It was I was on the Zoom with one of my team members, and I was like, man, like, you know, this was definitely a stupid moment of me going, people won't really care. This isn't that big of a deal. And that wasn't the case. And, you know, I'm very touched. So thank you very much to everyone who reached out and all the love around the 100th episode. This is a fun one today. This is a guy who, as you hear us talk about in this episode, when a D, who you all know and love by now, D Jaffe, when he started his LinkedIn group for those of us sort of willing to challenge some of the narratives and the stigma around addiction and substance misuse. The first meeting was four of us. It was a D, myself, a gentleman who I honestly cannot remember, and Tim Harrington. Tim is a guy who is a bit of a legend in the field. He and the D were some of the early adopters of a lot of this thinking. And you know, Tim has been a fantastic advocate around addiction and substance misuse and recovery for longer than I've been in recovery. I mean, he is truly one of the leaders on this issue, and he's done it all. And you'll hear that in this interview. As I mentioned to him, I first got connected to Tim when I went up to interview Elizabeth McKissick and the other members of Favor and U-Turn in Greenville, South Carolina. And Elizabeth, who is wonderful, you all remember her from season 1, she said to me, you know, if you have not talked to Tim Harrington yet, you're missing out. And that was, you know, a couple of years ago now, when we first chatted. That was a year and a half ago. And I immediately reached out to Tim, and we got connected and been chatting ever since. He's a guy that if you follow me on social media, you will have seen me share some of his stuff. That is guaranteed because I do it a lot. Not a whole lot else to say on the intro of this one. I think because I spent Monday's episode 100 really talking about the show a lot, you know, not a lot of updates there. I guess the one thing that I failed to mention as much on that is that there is still some merch available, in the sense that as my team and I figure out what's next on merch, you know, really taking this out of our hands, because we don't have the time to do more options the way we did the tank tops. There are still some tank tops available. If it's something you've been thinking about but have not got yet, please reach out. I'm doing some discounts right now, so please reach out. And of course, as always, jump on Patreon. That'll get you even more of a discount, so check out the Patreon. Other than that, just enjoy this fantastic conversation with Tim Harrington, who I really respect and appreciate for his work. And I will catch you at the end with your card and your good egg.
Choose your struggle.
People will forget what you said.
people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. That famous quote by the extraordinary Maya Angelou is exactly why I speak. It's why I tell my story and mix education around the topics of mental health, substance misuse and recovery, and drug use and policy with motivation, inspiration, and purpose. So when you're looking for your next keynote or breakout session speaker, reach out. Find me at my website, jshifman.com, and I promise you, your employees, your group members, the students at your school, everybody will come away having learned something. And that's how we create change. Reach out today. Thanks for sharing the podcast with your friends. If you're listening on Apple, please rate and review or check out the review link in the show notes. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, I'm Timothy Harrington, and I am a person in long-term recovery. I don't even actually call it recovery. I'm in long-term discovery because it's just been a constant iteration of like, what is this? And oh my God, and duck. And so I'm just a human being, or human becoming actually is more appropriate. And I've been in the behavioral healthcare space for 19 years now as a professional. And so that combination of that overlap or that hybrid model of professional and personal is what it is. And I know there's a lot of people out there for various reasons. We do the crossover from addiction survivor to working in the industry. And I really had nothing else to do. That's how that happened. But I've done a lot of different things, interventions, coaching for both the individual addiction survivor, somebody in early recovery, or not even interested in sort of traditional recovery. And then the family piece has been really my sort of swan song. For the last 12 years, I've focused on forming strategic alliances with treatment centers who are interested in sort of driving equanimity between the person who is in treatment and the family system, and really just tearing down the walls between them because they don't really exist anyway, and just really looking at it as a whole piece. And so that's been the most rewarding thing up until, well, still is, but up until recently. Pre-pandemic, met a guy who had treatment centers, got PTSD from owning a treatment center. That's in quotes, but and kind of came from technology and was interested in seeing what technology looked like when you sort of mix them with the traditional brick and mortar model. And that puts us to current time, which is New Life, which is a virtual care management platform that really addresses a lot of issues that haven't traditionally been able to be addressed because of the limitations of sort of the brick and mortar acute care model. And so I'm stoked about where the future is leading, not only myself, but just everybody who's in the space, man. Whether you're an advocate, whether you're somebody who's, struggling, somebody who is, just in the space and wanting to take stuff to the next level, because that's really who I am. I'm the guy, whether I was using or whether I'm not using, or whether I'm shopping or whether I'm watching TV. It's like, let's take it to the next level. Let's blow the roof off the pavilion. You know what I mean? And go big or go home is basically what I'm saying. I know you can appreciate that, Jay.
Very much so. And and for the listeners, Tim and I are both in Adie's group. By the time this comes out, y'all have heard Adie talk about his LinkedIn group. And in fact, some of those first meetings, it was just you and me and Adie and a couple other people.
The guy from England, I think. That guy from England, I think it was.
That's right.
I can't remember his name, but that was just us three. Yeah.
But here's the small world aspect. So that is how we currently cross paths a lot. But you and I got introduced after, listeners, here's a name you'll remember from last season, Elizabeth McKissick from down in South Carolina. I was living in Charleston, went up to Greenville to interview Elizabeth and a couple of the other people up in Greenville.
U-turn.
U-turn, right, in favor. And they said, Elizabeth said, just while we were shooting the shit before we started recording, she said, "Do you know Tim Harrington?" And I said, I don't. And she said, "Tim's an amazing guy. He was just here not long ago on his U.S. addiction tour."
Wide wonder, baby.
Yeah. And I said, okay, I'll reach out to him. Now, this isn't like, hey, here's a guy down the street. This is literally a guy completely over in California that you should reach out to. Now, here we are 2 years later doing this. So this world is a small one. And it's I would love for you to talk a little bit about that tour because it's such an interesting story.
Yeah, dude, I get the chills just thinking about it because it was so impactful in my life and my family's life. And we were literally in Australia. My wife's Australian, and we were off the grid, so to speak, because we're on the other side of the world. And so everybody's conducting business while we're sleeping. And so we got this really concentrated time, Jay, to kind of go like, hey, let's brainstorm. What do we want to do when we get back to the States? It's kind of, we've been doing the same thing. We're both the kind of people that just like to, take it to the next level, go big or go home. And so we'd always talked about going on a trip, renting an RV. And so it went from that to like, let's buy a bus, let's convert it, let's sell everything. So I'm not kidding when I'm talking about like, go big or go home. So we did that.
That's not just Tim. That's not the next level. That's 9 levels up. That is the most relative you could possibly do in that situation.
Dude, I'm telling you, it was like, and it made so much sense. So we just rolled into it, we leaned into it, and we just had the best time planning it, right? All of the sort of like the dreams of the ideal of the way we wanted it to look and where we wanted to go and what we wanted to see and who we wanted to meet. And so we did 22 events where we talked about addiction and mental health illness related stigma. And the biggest takeaway from that trip, Jay, was just like so thematic of what we were going through since Trump was elected. And that was the whole idea of like, we need to get together. We need to not be divided in this space. We need to stop the divisions around philosophy and belief and really start to focus on the person who's suffering in the streets or wherever they are, and stop acting as if, they have the privilege of even participating in these conversations. I call them like, highfalutin conversations and meetings that we're lucky enough to participate in while somebody is literally stuck in this fucking loop that's really, really, really painful. And I was like, enough of this nonsense. Let's focus on them. Let's get patient-centered. Let's get healthcare consumer-centered. And let's talk about what are the multiple ways that we can help them. Not just the way that I did it, not just the way that we do it here, but let's get on board with the way that other verticals exist in reality. And that is, not every customer wants the same style, wears the same size, or however you want to draw these comparisons or metaphors or whatever. We need to just focus on the person, and let's stop the nonsense and the bullshit of how we get all bogged down in these philosophical fucking highfalutin, I call, discussions that are just not about solution. They're just fucking ego. Let's just call it what it is, right? Like enough.
Yeah, and I think that's something that, so again, going back to our mutual friend Adi, that's something that we all have in common. There's very little sort of sandbox guarding in that group. Those of us who've been doing this for, in that particular realm. And that's something that I really respect about you, is that from day one, now you do work for a pretty awesome organization, but you rarely make it about that. We have these conversations about making sure that people have access to different opportunities, right? To use your analogy there, right until very recently, we've been forcing everybody to walk into the candy store and only buy one type of candy, right?
It's dystopian. You think about how dystopian it is. It's just ridiculous. It's like we make movies about this where there's a rebellion because the dystopian version of where things can go is not the way that humans want to live. If you want all the power, then you're okay with that dystopian environment. But if you're not, if you're just a run-of-the-mill, another bozo on the bus like you and me, we're like that. We're going to fucking rebel. You're going to maybe control and dominate for a little bit, but we're going to come at you. We're going to organize, and we're going to figure out how to tear it down because it isn't real. It's not sustainable. It may feel good in the meantime for some people, but it just is not. It's not sustainable. So this whole idea of, one color, one size, it's just, it's now permeating down into this sort of what I always referred to as this left of center $40 billion industry that's gotten away with, that dystopian version of things for too long at great expense and at high cost, and enough is enough. Drop the mic. That's it.
Yeah, and I think that what's so incredible is that 10 years ago, that would have been, you would have been the only person in a room saying that.
I was the only person. Let me just tell you a story. Okay, so I transitioned. Let's call it that. I transformed my life from. I was an AA legacy. I ended up in AA. I had an experience in AA that was not all bad. I formed relationships I still have today, and I think that is sort of the bedrock of what AA can provide you with, is some good relationships. It can provide you with some shitty ones too, but that's life in general. That's just a microcosm of life going on in there. And I think it's more the insistence on something black and white when it's really beautiful color. If you see it for what it is, there is beautiful color, there is beautiful nuance, but if you get swept up in the dogma, then you're going to miss that, right? And I think good enough dual citizenship at the least in terms of your participation in 12-step, but also in other verticals, other mutual aid support groups, let's just call it other stuff, so you can have a well-rounded sort of, viewpoint. Because again, dystopian versions of anything is not going to get you all the way there. It's going to hold you back. So you and I are talking about an Adi and that group and other groups, and we're growing, and that's really exciting. We are growing in numbers. And so the story I'm going to tell you is that I was in that transformation, going from one foot in that old paradigm into the new paradigm after I discovered William White, who's a very important person for your audience in terms of research around recovery, not pathology, not disease, but recovery going back to the fucking 60s, dude. Okay. So this is a wide breadth and depth of insight and knowledge that is so important to the audience that I can't overstate it in terms of being able to really grab context in terms of what's been going on, boots on the ground, where nobody's really been paying attention from that recovery standpoint, right? Because we talk about all the time, multiple pathways to recovery, right? Multiple. And when we start talking about what's the research and the data, there's a lot of it out there that just nobody really knows about. And we need more of that awareness around that. So I'm starting to talk the language, and I'm starting to be what people would consider a heretic, right? So I was getting like stiff-armed here and there, right? And so I would get on Facebook, these Facebook messages saying, I can't comment on your post, but keep it up. Because I'll get fired, basically. So, and they said, are you going to this conference? And I said, yeah. And they're like, well, I want to talk to you, but we can't do it on campus. Can you meet me off campus from where everybody meets? Because they can't be seen with me. So I was kind of like deep throat in the parking lot, exchanging pleasantries about how they wish they could be more out. Let's just call it what it is. And we're 12 years, 13 years later. And dude, oh my God, some of those people are out now. They're out of the closet. They're talking about it, and they're carrying the torch for progressive, modern, relevant strategies, basically. So I'm so stoked that things are changing slowly, but surely.
We're still the smaller group, but as my listeners know, I say this all the time. I went to a conference right before COVID for those who work in the medical industry in recovery, and AA wasn't mentioned once. So, I mean, it is growing. My question for you, though, and I obviously have my opinions on this too, but you know, as someone who went through AA, my question is why, and very specific why. And that is, those of us who do this, you'll never hear you or I say AA should go away. That's not the point of what we're doing. And yet, when we say, as you just so perfectly said, it just needs to be more. There needs to be more. The people who push back are people saying, oh, you're anti-AA. Why is there so much guarding in that sense, in your opinion?
Yeah. So for me, it's very psychological. And that is in the sense that for the people who are really vocal about pushing back and they immediately say, why do you AA bash? And I'm like, what are you talking about? That's not AA bashing. And by the way, nothing is above reproach, including myself. Nobody is above that. So I'm all down for feedback. I'm only here because I'm open to that, right? Remaining teachable, being open, just open. So the people that aren't, it's very ironic because it's paradoxical because within the doctrine of AA, it's very clear that you shouldn't have contempt prior to investigation. You should be curious. Bill Wilson, by the way, who is a fucking hero of mine, he's a goddamn maverick. He got kicked out of his own program, and that is not unheard of from people who are mavericks who start movements. And it was a movement. The egalitarian approach was why he was called one of the most influential, and the book was called influential, one of the most of the 20th century. It wasn't because of the stuff that we get bogged down with and this abstinence only stuff and all of that. And in fact, that's not really a part of the whole original context of the text and the thing. It was really, here's how we did it, and then it just blew up from there, right? So here's the point. The point is the why is that there is a certain sense of insecurity that exists in the people who are the most vocal, right there. And I ventured again, I've never really had an intense conversation because it never goes well. But I'm going to take some assumptions here. And that is that their own well-being is tenuous. Their own health is tenuous. Their own sense of self is tenuous. Okay. And I think it's because it's built on a necessarily a house of cards, because it really isn't reflective of what how I interpret the 12 steps and what it really means and meant to Bill Wilson, because I've read everything about what he's written post the 12 steps. He wrote 164 pages with Bob. That's 164 pages. How many books have more pages than that? Most books, right? Okay, so let's just all take a pause here and think about how much more has been said.
So for the listeners who somehow don't know, Bill Wilson, he's talking about the founder of AA. And the big book is tough to read, let's be honest. It's not exactly a page turner. But to your point, which is a very good one, some of the things that he wrote after AA are fascinating. And it's when he got more into the psychology behind it, and in some instances very into psychedelics. And
yes,
so
he dropped acid. Let's just call it what it was.
Lot.
He dropped acid. Okay.
Yeah. So I heard someone say, and I want your opinion on this. I heard someone once say that the current iteration of AA, the kind that we see, parodied in movies and TV, whatever, is a very reductionist sort of iteration of the original belief of what AA could be. Do you think that's true?
I think that's absolutely true. In fact, I just have I just explored a series on Amazon Prime called Loudermilk. And it's all based on AA, and this guy's in AA, and it's like, to me, because of how far I am down the road from all of that sort of initial relationship with the 12 steps and the big book and the rooms and all of that, it's a parody. It's such a parody, and it does such a disservice. And I hate these shows that try to portray in a way that is entertaining. I'm just like, I cringe when I watch these characters talk about the 12 steps and their sort of personality around the 12 steps, because I think it does a total disservice. And I think it drives more people away from actually asking for help, if that's what they know is supposedly what help is for somebody who's struggling with the experience of addiction. Okay. It's really unhelpful. It's not helpful at all. And I want to just comment all the time. I want to call the fucking producers, and I want to call the star, and I want to find out. I'm going to go, like, you need to just, there needs to be what do they call it? Like a disclaimer. There needs to be a disclaimer with all of those things, that this is just a very narrow viewpoint of a much larger context that is never given any airtime. And that's including the media and how it's written about, like you've talked about. Like there's very few outlets, like there's Filter and there's a few other ones where they really sort of take the whole thing and they give you a good viewpoint of what's happening in policy and harm reduction and politics and all of this stuff. But otherwise it's the straight fucking mythic, very reductive, this is what addiction looks like, those horrible photos of parents in the front seat nodded out with their kids in the back seat, all of that stuff that really fucking hurts people. It doesn't help anyone. And it just breaks my heart every time, because I think those kinds of ways of talking about this story actually kills people. It doesn't fucking keep them alive. And it's just heartbreaking, Jay. It's heart fucking breaking.
I'm with you, and that's why I love, when what you and I do in a lot now a growing number of people, but there are so few people in that group, again, on LinkedIn, but also just doing the work on, talking on social media as we do, that don't invite others into this realm, because that's how we end these myths. That's how we expose the lies. That's how we help educate people.
Yeah, we got to turn on the light. We got to come out of the church. We got to come out of the church basements and gather on Main Street and say, this is who we are. There is some great writings by Bill White, by the way, that draws this really intense, beautiful parallel between the gay rights movement and recovery advocacy in its current incarnation, and its possibilities for really changing and doing the things that you and I want to do in terms of change and advocacy, because silence equals death, and there's too much silence. The silence is deafening in terms of the number of people in 12-step, conservatively probably, or maybe accurate, 2 million people. Okay, that's what they're saying, right? There's 23 million people in remission from substance use disorder, right? 23 million a year at least, okay, in remission. 2 million in AA, okay? If you took 100,000 people and walked the Capitol, okay, the nation's capital, and said, enough is enough, no more, don't throw people in jail for possession or paraphernalia or whatever, okay? Not to mention all the racial stuff, right? The foundation of the drug war is race, okay? All of this stuff, okay, is so important to every single person. All of it is absolutely necessary for us to get out in front of this, instead of fucking playing catch up and blaming all the wrong conspirators, and the hypocrisy and the inconsistency and the out of alignment in terms of who we're mad at or what we're mad about in terms of what's going on in the public eye, like the Sacklers and the opioid, where we can really count overdoses, but we can't count people who are in recovery. No, we can't. Apparently we can't do that, or we don't do that. And so what we really need to do is change the focus, because what we focus on expands. And that's why we're in the shit storm we're in, is because we're focusing on the wrong things. We're giving credibility and we're giving power to the wrong things, including drugs. I say this every time. If I say it once, I say it 1,000 times a day on LinkedIn, or I say, drugs aren't the problem, period, next. And drugs aren't the problem, period, next. Because it's just a whack-a-mole situation. What's going to be the drug du jour next year? What's going to be the one next year? And meanwhile, people are dying because we're not addressing the protagonist in the story. We're not talking about it. It's just.
I love that so much, and we need more people to be saying that the drugs aren't the problem.
They're not.
I wrote something the other day. It's like, researchers say, well, these overdose deaths are really caused by the war on drugs and inequalities and going on and on and on. And then, of course, the media headline is, another overdose caused by fill in the blank, right?
Yes.
It's just so easy, and yet it's not correct. And it is, you're right, it is killing people. That is a good way to put it.
It's 100% doing it because, and this is what somebody told me, and I think it's an offshoot of sort of the belief of Gabor Mate. And Gabor Mate talks about the reason we're stuck in this loop is very simple. And I'm not going to get it exactly right, but basically the idea is, he says, we don't move forward because I'm afraid of exposing something about myself If I'm going to really fight the good fight, then I'm going to have to go all in. Okay. I'm going to have to go all in. And that means I'm going to have to expose some weakness of my own. Right. And so it's like, in order for us to get past and in front, we all have to say, it's me. It's not you. It's us. It's we. Okay. I'm part of the problem. I can't just be a guy who goes on social media and spouts, this is the problem. Opiates, the Sacklers, big pharma. I mean, you name it, whatever it is. It's not it. It's me. It's my perception. It's my beliefs. It's the policies that have been created because of those. It's 100 years of criminalization. There's no context. It's about choice. One thing, choice, not human behavior on the continuum, but the choices that you're making. And we just don't understand why you keep doing it. Please stop making those choices. Okay, stop it. It's bad. It's wrong. You're bad. You're wrong. Or what? However we're doing it in this black and white thinking, this all or nothing proposition. Just say no, right? All of those totally inappropriate, but not based in reality arguments. Okay, and so because we do that, we just keep counting bodies. We keep making excuses. We keep blaming something like a drug, or a drug policy alliance, or anybody who believes in decriminalization, or anybody who believes in all of this. They all become the smokescreen for somebody just saying, we're not getting it right. We've made a mistake. We have wasted $1 trillion. They're going to just keep going all in. And it's like, oh my God, to what end? How many bodies have to pile up before you're willing to say, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we need a combination of things, not just this and that, but maybe both. How about that? Maybe we give that a shot. No.
Well,
I'm right.
Well, you and
wrong.
I could do an entire episode on this because it's something that we agree on, and it's very important work. But I do want to talk about the work you are literally doing. And before we do that, we should pause and please shout out where people can find you online and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, right now I'm very, very, very 100% invested in virtual care management. This thing that was already happening at a very slow pace. Again, change is slow. But thanks to the pandemic, somebody said the other day, never let a crisis go to waste. Really take advantage of it, innovate. And I think we've done that to a certain extent. And so we're innovating in the sense that we're trying to partner with brick and mortar treatment centers to expand access, to improve outcomes, to reduce cost, to basically go from exclusivity to inclusivity, to address some of the very real challenges that exist in the old model. The old model is very much treatment centered, and we're saying that's not working, guys. We need to be healthcare consumer centered, because they're going to tell you what they need. You can fulfill those needs, and we can start to get out in front of this and literally change the trajectory of people's lives and addiction treatment. And that's what we want to do. We want to impact 1 million additional lives, okay, by saying, let's stop doing it the way we've always done it. This is the whole theme, right? My themes are continuing. No matter what I'm doing, the theme is the same. Let's stop doing it the way we've always done it. Let's get radical. Let's get modern and relevant, and let's change the way we do things so that we can change lives. Otherwise, we're going to end up having the same conversation every year after year. Why aren't things getting better? Why aren't we changing? Why aren't outcomes getting better? What the hell is going on here? Why are we even in this space if we're not holding ourselves accountable to a higher standard? I don't understand it. Why are we satisfied with 10% improvement? That's ridiculous. And I'm sick of it. And so this is as much of an advocacy play as it is a business play, because everything I do is combined with advocacy as well as what I'm doing for a living to be self-supporting. But it's got to be both. And that's what I'm calling people out right now, Jake. Right now, I'm calling people out. Whoever's listening to this, you cannot be in this space and not be an advocate as well. Don't go to work and then go to a church basement and hide out. Go to work and then go to the Capitol. Go to work and then go to your local representatives. Go to work and then find out what your local representatives are doing about bettering the situation for people who are struggling in the streets. and enough, because we're not going to be able to do this unless we get a critical mass of people who are sick and tired of being sick and tired of the same old, right? That cliche has to transmit into policy, into the way we see each other as people who struggle with mental health, illness, and addiction. If we don't do that, then we're going to be having the same goddamn boring conversation about, boy, I wish things were different. And it's like, really? Well, then you're going to have to get busy. You're going to have to take action. You're going to have to get off your ass and get out into some advocacy group, get into some group and start to help move things in a different direction. Okay. That's what I think is really what we need to do, is to call people out and say, yes, go to work and have a living, but also don't just go and hide out in your 12-step group or in your community groups. Go into the streets, go to the Capitol, go to your governing bodies and say, we're tired of 87,000 people, and that's conservative. That doesn't include suicides and all kinds of other things that have happened in terms of the last couple of years in terms of deaths, Jay. That's conservative. That's just overdose death. That's not anything else. I'm talking hundreds of thousands of people, and yet it's crickets. It's crickets. Can I just say one more thing before I get off this rant? Do you remember Ebola? Before, there was one person in America that had Ebola. There was an emergency session of Congress, and they committed $1 billion to fight Ebola. And there was one person who had it. Nobody had died. And we have 80 to 100,000 people, okay, who are dying of overdose, poison drug supply, no widespread distribution of Suboxone because we have these rules and hoops you got to jump through. All of this stuff because of stigma and discrimination and marginalization and years of criminalization. And yet we're okay with bodies piling up like this. This is fucked. This is so goddamn fucked. And people should be ashamed of themselves if they're hiding out and they're not fucking saying enough is enough. It's just, it makes me so angry.
I'm definitely with you. And you know, before we move literally into the work your awesome company is doing, though, if someone is feeling this and wants to hear more from you, where can they find you online?
You can find me on LinkedIn. Just look under my names. Facebook, of course. Instagram, at Sustain Your Recovery is my Instagram handle. But wherever there are other people to share ideas with is where I'm going to be, because this is how we start to build critical mass and how movements are built, right? They're built in the social media space where things can go viral, where people can speak to what they're passionate about, right? And it doesn't matter how many people are listening. That's the whole thing. Anybody who has 1 million fucking followers right now started out with one, okay? So let's just think about expression first and foremost. Be mad, be upset, say it loud and say it proud, okay? And that starts, and then this is what I learned on the Wide Wonder tour, circling back, traveling the country on a bus, is that we take all of these little verticals and silos, and then we all come together and we make one big giant silo, okay? We need to tear down those walls and make big giant groups that say enough is enough of this. We're done with this. We're done with focusing on drugs are the problem. Welcome to drugsarenottheproblem.com. Okay, that's how you start to build critical mass and how you build movements. But you got to start talking. You got to get mad and you got to be loud. That's what we need to do, because you and I are never going to stop. I'll be screaming something when they put me under, right? They're not going to be able to shut me up because the stakes are too high. They keep getting higher. I have kids now, right? I have different value systems that have evolved over time. And I am not going to be one of those people that if my kid, God forbid, struggles with this, I should be able to know like this, who's the best, who's got the best outcomes, who gives me the best value for my healthcare dollar, where am I sending the people that I love, or the people that call me and say, Tim, where's the best place? You know what I mean? That should be easy. It should have gotten easier, Jay, over the last 19 years in this space, and it hasn't, and that's fucking bullshit.
I am with you, and I definitely agree with everything you just said. Y'all know I love to read, and almost every episode of this podcast includes a recommendation to check out an awesome book. From Adi Jaffe's Abstinence Myth to Johann Hari's Chasing the Scream, I'm constantly looking for new books to learn from and enjoy. That's why I'm super excited to partner with Bookshop. Bookshop is a wonderful website that helps you find all your favorite books and support your local neighborhood bookstore in the process. I've bought everything from textbooks to Star Wars novels on Bookshop, and I've supported my local store with each transaction. Best of all, my Bookshop link will allow you to see all the books I've mentioned on the show right in one spot. So check out Bookshop today using the link in my show notes, or go to bookshop.org/shop/CYS, and you'll find all the awesome books you want and support the podcast in the process. Check it out today. Subscribe to my Patreon for behind-the-scenes looks at the podcast, sneak peeks, and bonus data. You'll also get a discount on Choose Your Struggle merch. Find it at patreon.com/chooseyourstruggle. So tell us, though, a little bit, because you are obviously an incredible advocate, but you do have a company that you work with. So tell us about New Life. Yeah, so New Life Virtual is a software as a service, just to get technical, platform. So it's like it's a mobile app that has been built over since 2017 in many different iterations before I came on board, that is designed to take advantage of the idea of connection being the currency of wellness. This is something we really believe in, okay? How do you foster more connection in this space? Well, traditionally, the default is go to treatment and then go to AA. That's your aftercare plan. So that's your community. Well, that's 2 million people. What about the millions and millions, the 18 million other people who do not consume services, by the way, okay? There are 18 million people who are clinical for substance use disorder who do not, for one reason or the other, do not consume services. Most of those reasons are rooted in stigma, okay? So if you can say you're a treatment center that gets 100 calls a month, okay? You book 10 into your brick and mortar. That's your business model, all right? What do you do with the 90 other ones? You send them back out into the Google sphere. They have to fend for themselves. You refer here, you refer there, but they're not coming into your brand. You're just taking the ones, you're creaming off the top. You're saying, these are your 10. If you have virtual care, if you were to set yourself up for virtual care, okay, you increase your billings, you increase the opportunity to engage with people in your brand, which you spend a lot of money on, that you're very proud of. And now you can say, you know what, you sound like you're perfect. You're not right for inpatient, but you're right for this. So now all of a sudden you're not taking 10, you're taking 15, maybe 20. And now you've got these people in your brand, and the people who do come into your brick and mortar. Now you've got continuing care because everybody's on your app. So now you've got digital continuing care where you can stay in contact at a much higher level than a 30, 60, 90-day phone call from somebody nobody knows. There's no relationship. They're just like, are you sober? Wow, there's an outcome. Are you sober? Yeah, no, I'm sober. Like bong hit in the background. You know what I mean? Like it's not modern. It's not relevant. It's not about outcomes. It's not about long-term care. You can't do that in the brick and mortar paradigm. You need some digital bridging. You need some digital help. You need a hybrid model. All right. Click and mortar, we're calling it. Okay. And the idea is that now we can fulfill by getting out of the silos, building digital bridges, creating prehabs and post-habs, all driven by this constant contact, right? 24/7, 365, branded app. Everybody can stay connected. By that constant contact, we have a better chance of early intervention, reducing healthcare costs, keeping people in community, keeping people connected at a much higher level, driving costs down, increasing recovery capital. It's just the right way to do it. I mean, I've been in this space for 19 years, and everybody always talked about continuing care. Very few people participate in it, dude. Very few people. We're talking 15%, maybe 20%, for many different reasons. Convenience, stigma, treatment burnout. I mean, you name it, cost, on and on and on.
And we all just say, sorry, that's really all we have to offer. And I call bullshit again. No, we have other things we can offer. Let's step up to the plate. This is very similar. This is very similar to advocacy. You can see thematically it's the same. Let's stop doing it the way we've always done it at great cost. Let's raise our standards. Let's hold ourselves to higher standards, greater expectations, so that we can save more lives, impact more lives, reduce costs. This is where everything is going, right? We know that. That's all anybody's ever been talking about since that pivot back in March of 2020, right? Everybody had to go they had to go to teletherapy. Well, this isn't teletherapy. This is virtual care. It's remote patient monitoring and a teletherapy option, but it's really about community building and keeping people connected over the long term. And you do that with apps. That's basically it in a nutshell. Yeah.
So if someone's listening to this, right, and they're going, oh my God, like this is exactly what I need. Do they go online? Do they download the app first? How does someone get involved with you?
Yeah, newlifevirtual.com. Okay, you go to there and it'll start to explain in more detail. But just think about this. People are going to consume more digital healthcare in the future, not less, right? That's where everything is going. Everything is going. Consumers love it. The results and the outcomes are way greater than anyone expected, because that's what's been happening. That's what's been happening since March of last year, particularly in this space. In other spaces, Jay, again, people are way ahead of behavioral health. we're coming late to the party again, okay? All right, and now it's just, I'm not waiting along. I'm going to push again and again to speed up this process of recovery. Let's just call it recovery for treatment centers, okay? We get to recover from the old paradigm that doesn't get us the outcomes and the engagement that people are looking for, right? You build it, people will come. That's it. If you say to somebody on your website or in your admissions, we have virtual care, they're like, what? Virtual care, what does that mean? You could recover in place, stay at home, recover at your own pace. You don't have to leave. You don't have to quit your job. You can stay. And by the way, let's talk about myths in terms of the overall landscape of people who are struggling. 70% of people who are clinical for substance use disorder are still employed. Okay? 70%. But what does the industry do? Wait till they get fired. Okay? We're just going to wait till you get fired and then you'll come to us, okay? And let me talk about something else really quickly. The 3 million people that are consuming services through the 16,000 outlets for substance use disorder, 3 million only, okay? Out of the 21 million who have substance use disorder, so that leaves that 18 million who aren't consuming services. The 3 million that are, the majority of them are there by coercion. What kind of a model is that? Okay. And we're wondering why people don't stay sober or they don't stay in recovery. It's a terrible model. We're just saying, let's remodel the model. That's it.
Well, and I definitely agree with you. That's where, this industry is headed. A lot of the best organizations, whether it's yours or Lion Rock or Adidas Ignited, are all heading in this virtual or as you said, click and mortar, right? A little bit of both. So props to you for that. And it'll be really interesting. I think we'll look back 10 years from now and we'll look at guys like the three that you had just mentioned and be like, man, why weren't more people doing that?
Okay, well, all you got to do is go back to 99, 2000 and think about all the people in e-commerce who said the same thing, right? So Jeff Bezos is the richest man on the planet, and that doesn't make him great. It doesn't make him not great. But what he said was, yes, people will buy books online, while everybody else was saying, why? If I can just go to Barnes and Noble, why do I need to order? Why would I do that? Well, here we are, 2021. The answer is pretty clear. And there's a graveyard full of people who did not go with the e-commerce platform. And it's because they just didn't get it. And there's the same inflection point right now in this field. There are people that are going to say, no, face-to-face is the best. And blah. They're going to get very protective, right? We talked about that earlier about people's recovery. They get very defensive. Okay. Well, listen, it cannot be about you. Okay. It's got to be about, and it gets to be about the healthcare consumer. Stop making it about you. Okay, that's the problem. We have treatment-centered care. We need healthcare consumer-centered care if we're going to get better outcomes, lower costs, and impact more lives. We can't do it with 16,000 treatment centers serving 3 million people. That's just preposterous. It's not sustainable. We're not helping enough people. We need virtual. We need digital. We need to get on board. We need to go to the goddamn party and say, show me how to do this. Show me how to be better. Show me how to help more people. Why aren't we saying that? I don't get it. It's very frustrating. And it's, again, just like the same thing we've been talking about since the beginning of this. Why do we just keep staying with the same thing? We actually treat people and say, why do you keep doing the same thing over expecting a different result? And I would look back and go, how come you do it, treatment center owner? How can you keep doing the same thing over expecting a different result? Well, because you have one thing, and I'll finish with this, because you have the out of blaming the patient. That has to fucking stop.
Well put. Well, you and I, as I've now said twice, you and I could do this for multiple hours. I'm very cognizant of your time. So before we get to the final couple of questions, just one more time, shout out all the links where people can find you online.
Yeah, I would say go to newlifevirtual.com, go to New Life Virtual on Facebook. There's a company page on LinkedIn, New Life Virtual. Look that up. There's what we're very proud of doing besides the work we're doing and just, trying to, develop these collaborations with treatment centers so that we can increase our reach, help more people using their networks, is we're really wanting to educate. Okay, so most of the posting that I do, it's a mix, but most of the posting that I do is educational in nature in terms of what is virtual care, who's doing it, what does it do for you, where are we going, where have we been, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like today, and how can we take advantage of that context in order to become better businesses, become better coaches, better practitioners, better therapists, better business owners, right? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, we just want to be better at what we do, right? We want to help more people. Well, if we're going to do that, we get to be adaptable. We get to look to the future. We get to pick up more tools. These are the same instructions we're giving people who are struggling with addiction. So let's take that on board ourselves. Let's be open-minded. Let's be curious, and let's move this. Let's be champions. Let's be innovators. That's what we're asking of people who are struggling. Let's do that as business owners, as providers and practitioners. Let's ask that of ourselves too. And we can change things at a much faster pace, which means we're going to be impacting many more lives. And that's what I want to see happen. And so go to New Life Virtual on all the platforms, search it, like the Facebook page. You're going to see tons of stuff on there about the industry, about lots of really fun educational things. And then you'll also see some things and be able to find out what particularly New Life is. And we'll go from there.
And definitely follow you on LinkedIn. I can attest to that. Some really good. I share your stuff all the time, so my followers probably already have seen that. I appreciate it. So we finished with the same two questions on every show. The first of which is, what is your self-care habit? What works for Tim?
My self-care habit is walking in nature every single day. I get away from my desk, and I've done this, for a long time. Nature is where you get the strongest connection. I don't care what it is that you're looking for. Nature will reflect back to you energetically. Like literally the other day, I hugged a tree. And the only reason I did that is because somebody said, if you want to get grounded, what is the most grounded thing in the world? Trees and plants. Okay. So I went up and I hugged a tree. There's a thing called earthing, by the way. I don't know if look it up. I'm not going to go into it, but look it up. But it's about connecting with the energetic stuff that's going on in nature. And by the way, Jay, you and I and human beings are nature. We didn't come from another planet, contrary to L. Ron Hubbard's belief. We did not come from another planet, Xanu or whatever it's called. I might know too much. Don't be mad at me for that. But nature, man, nature is such a calming, amazing energy. So that is number one. Number two is meditation. Okay, guided meditations. There's a great app called Synctuition, which is all about 3D sounds that'll literally blow your mind. And then Calm and Headspace. I highly recommend them. They are amazing resources, both for content and just education, but also the way that they help you with curated things. By entering some of your data, you'll get a really curated meditation plan, which is awesome.
All great tips. Thank you for that. I always finish with the same last question.
Yeah.
And it's, we've now spent the last almost 50 minutes hearing how you're amazing. We should all be following you, which we all should. But this is your chance to shout out some other things. What are you reading? What are you listening to? What are you watching? Who are you following that we should all go check out?
Yeah, right now I'm following everybody who's in the trauma space. Peter Levine, Bessel van der Kolk. I'm going and watching anything that I can. Gabor Mate, as usual. But some of these other people who are contemporaries of his, Peter Levine and Bessel van der Kolk, there's a great book called The Body Keeps the Score. I highly recommend that book. Peter Levine, I haven't read any of his books, but I'm going to one of his seminars, online virtual seminars, anything that has to do with trauma, because we live in a trauma-phobic culture. Part of the reason it's very difficult, this is coming full circle to the reason why things haven't changed for a long time, is because it really is this sort of trauma phobia that's been going on for many, many years. And if we can break through that, we can really start to shift ourselves individually, but also as communities and as the planet, because it is the thing that we all have in common. As a planet, people are, and by the way, trauma is subjective, so don't compare traumas. Whatever you do, don't go there, because one person's trauma is another person's get over it. So be very respectful that it is subjective. But what I'm listening to is whatever my kids are listening to. They're sending me playlists because they have great taste in music. They're very different. But I really enjoy Mac Miller. He is this kid who, God rest his soul, rest in peace, Mac Miller. Every time I think about him, I want to cry. Oh, fuck. That kid was so talented. And he was so, he had aspects of what we all have, and that sensitivity and that insight and that wanting to help people and wanting to be expressive and creative. And so I listened to him a lot.
By the way, that's a great point on Mac Miller. I feel the same way about Juice WRLD. If your kids haven't sent you Juice WRLD.
Oh no, that's another one. Absolutely.
Taken 100%. Way too soon. And such a great stigma busting artist that he was willing to voice things that other people would not, and he overdosed, right. And that's so sad.
That's right.
So
artists are a big part of who I am, and I know some people who have been through publicly stuff, and so I'm very sensitive to how we gossip about or speculate about people's use or people's mental health challenges. And that's come up recently in the news. And it's one of those things, again, stigma is what our whole tour was about. So read whatever you can about stigma. There's a great website called Stigma Free, and just search on Instagram too. People who are, there's a one called Million. Let me just look this up. This is super important. I want you to know about these people also, Jay. Super incredible organization. I'm going to meet with the guy who started it. He does this whole Made of Millions. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Made of Millions, on a mission to change the world, how the world perceives mental health. And he had this whole thing about shame. Shame stopped me from, and I recommend this to everybody. Go to their Instagram page and just look how powerful it is, the messaging that this guy has come up with. Somebody that you should reach out to and have on your show. He is an amazing dude. Anyway, Made of Millions is something that I'm following all the time because it's very inspirational. It talks a lot about shame. That's something that we also should all be talking about along with trauma. It's one of those things that keeps people silent in a big way.
Well, we could do a whole other episode on some of those topics, but I very much appreciate you being here, Tim. It's always good to catch up, and you're doing so much awesome work that sometimes it's hard to keep up with all the great stuff you're doing, but it's great, and I'm glad that we were able to carve out this time.
Me too, Jay, and props to you, man, and let's just keep going. Everybody who's listening, take it to the next level. If you think you're there, you're not. Let's go one rung higher, because the stakes are super high, and we do have We can make change, and we can make great change. I believe that this is the decade of the hero, and that means each and every one of us, and I mean this seriously, each one of us can be a hero in our own way. Carve out whatever niche you want, that you're passionate about, and take it to the next level, because that is going to save lives. That's going to impact lives. That's going to change people's trajectory. And this is all about getting knocked out of your orbit so that you can see things for the first time. That's what psychedelics, that's this whole movement. We can do a whole thing on that, but it's about changing your mind to change your life and others. And that's how I'll leave it.
I am so excited to tell you about my new CBD sponsor, Roadrunner. Y'all know I loved my old CBD sponsor, and I switched for one main reason. This stuff works. I've been a runner my whole life, but unfortunately I'm also super easily injured. One of my high school friends used to call me Mr. Glass. And back in 2015, when I ran my first half marathon, I got hurt, like really hurt. And since then, I haven't been able to run more than 3 or 4 miles without serious pain. That is until I tried Roadrunner CBD's muscle gel. In a few short months, I'm regularly running 5.5 to 6 miles each outing, and I'm currently training for my next half marathon. I don't want to call it a miracle cure, but it's damn near close. So check it out at my personal Roadrunner link, which is roadrunnercbd.com/ref/CYS. Again, that's roadrunnercbd.com/ref/CYS, or at the link in my show notes or on my podcast website, and use the code CYS at checkout to get 10% off on all of their awesome products. Check it out today. Find me on social media. Check the link in the show notes or search for me, Jay Shifman, on YouTube and LinkedIn, and Choose Your Struggle on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All right, we've come to the end of another episode of the Choose Your Struggle podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in to this awesome conversation with Tim Harrington. I hope you enjoyed that. I said this a couple of times before. I said it on the intro, but definitely check out Tim on social media. He is a guy who sort of lives what I aim to do with Monday episodes. He really starts conversations in a wonderful way. There are times where Tim will post something and talk about something that I'm not even aware of, because he's been doing this for so long. He's forgotten more about this work than most people know. So definitely check out Tim on social media and all of his work with New Life and everything else. So he is truly a guy who's doing fantastic work. I'm going to talk about your good egg first before we do the card. I forgot to mention this on the way in, but the birthday fundraiser, the 2021 birthday fundraiser is live. Now, you may remember, if you've been listening to the show since last year, that last year for my birthday, I set a goal of raising $10,000 for Drug Policy Alliance, which is a fantastic organization. And thanks to all of your hard work, we ended up raising $12,000, over $12,000. And Kellen Rusiniello of Drug Policy Alliance came on the show after that to talk about what is being done and kind of where that money would help. So we're doing a different organization this year. I've set a goal of 2,500, a lot easier to hit than last year, for Savage Sisters. Now, some of you may know I've mentioned this a little bit on here. I've talked about it on social media a lot. I joined the board of this amazing organization here in Philadelphia a couple weeks ago. They are doing simply just life-changing work. They have recovery housing. They have 4 places right now. They're shooting for a couple more that helps people who have already gone through treatment, but as they're getting back on their feet, find a place to live. The houses are very, it's just, I don't think you can overstate how important the role of recovery housing is. But they also do outreach. And this is the part that I've been much more involved with so far, in some of the neighborhoods that are hard hit here by being ignored by our leadership and the people who, look, every city has neighborhoods that are beautiful and have just so much money has been spent on, and all of that is not happening in a lot of other neighborhoods. The city ignores it, or people who give funding to help neighborhoods be beautiful ignore it. And in these areas, Savage Sisters operates. We give out things like food and water, clothing, harm reduction tools like Narcan and clean syringes. Again, these are truly life-changing experiences. So I deeply care about this organization. I reached out before I even moved here to the founder, and we've become friends, and I'm lucky to call myself a board member. The link to this fundraiser is in the show notes. You'll hear me talk about this more in the next couple of weeks. It'll go for 3 weeks. So, I think we can hit that goal before this is even dropped. We're already 10% of the way there. So I set it lower because this is not a national organization. So I kind of figured that less people would get involved. But so far, people have been very kind. So I hope this continues. Your good egg is not to donate. I can't ask you to do that. If you have the money, please do. I very much would appreciate it. You can find the link on my Facebook or in the show notes here. It's shared all over. But also, what's really important is just to share the link. That's your good egg. Just share it. You can tag me. You can mention that you heard it here, and I will very much appreciate that. The awareness is such an important piece in fundraising. It's just having people know that this is happening. I got a donation for $10 a couple days ago from someone that I've never met. She was connected to me through a harm reduction group in Charleston, South Carolina. Those are the kind of things where if I hadn't shared this, she doesn't donate, right? That's $10. It doesn't happen. And so that's so important. So please just share it. That's your good egg. Share it around. You can put it on any social media you want. Tag me if you would like. I would appreciate it, so I can see where it's going. But you don't even have to. You can just mention that you heard this on one of your favorite podcasts, Choose Your Struggle, and you're sharing the donation page. So again, you can find that in my social media, Facebook especially. I've been sharing it a lot there. But by the time this comes out, it'll be over other places too. And the show notes, you can just find it in the show notes. It is a Facebook fundraiser. The organization is so young that their fundraising page is still under construction. And so just to make it easier, I have just set up a Facebook fundraiser. So thank you for that. Thank you in advance. Today's card, we're going to use Rick Hansen's Just One Thing card pack. These are 52 practices for more happiness, love, and wisdom. Here is your card. Accept difficulty. Life is full of challenges, from little hassles to major crises and tragedies. When we resist the difficulty in a change, that simply adds to the stress. So try the attitude of accepting difficulty instead of getting aggravated by it. Acknowledge any stress, weariness, frustration, anxiety, or pain that you feel. Accept the impact on your body and mind of whatever is difficult. Say to yourself, this is difficult, and it's okay that it feels difficult. Recognize that others face difficulties too. Recognize your shared experience with them, our common humanity in carrying burdens. That is a great card. That's such an important one, and we talk about this a lot, thankfully, because I don't think I can go a day on Instagram without seeing a post that says everybody's carrying a burden that you don't see, or everyone's struggling with something that you don't see. That is such an important thing to remember, and I think it goes hand in hand with something I've said before on this podcast, which is the benefit of the doubt. It's easy to just jump to, oh well, this person's just an asshole. Or this person is just a dick. And in reality, maybe they are, but also maybe that person is struggling with something that we can't see. Maybe that person just came from their home where they had a huge fight with their spouse. I don't know. We have no idea. And so that piece is incredibly important, both for yourself to recognize that it's okay to struggle, obviously, but also in other people, recognizing that, hey, I don't know this person's life, and because of that, I can't judge. That's super, super important as I am struggling to put the cards away. That's my struggle right now. No, I'm just struggling. So anyway, while I struggle with these cards, we'll go ahead and end it there. But as always, the most important thing is to be vulnerable, show your empathy, spread your love, and choose your struggle.